Hi, Mira. So nice to see you. It's so great to have you on the podcast, Chat About AI. You're a data scientist at Google, and that's how we were working together. And I just wanted to know more about you. So I appreciate you coming on to this podcast and talking to me today. It's great to have you on. Do you want to tell us a little more about yourself?
Absolutely. No, thank you, Vicky. It's such a pleasure to come chat with you as always. My background, so I come from an engineering background, but have been a data scientist for most of my career. Really involved with the startup community here in Boston, but also have a role working on enterprise machine learning solutions at Google, which is how I know you, Vicky. So and yeah, and for fun on the side, I teach fitness classes. I have some long-term interests in enhancing people's lives in terms of health and fitness using tech and AI. So we'll see about that in the coming years. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. I'm based here in Boston.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was just in Boston this week and it was chilly. I was happy to be back in Atlanta because the weather is so much sunnier and it's like 50 degrees. I'm like, "Oh, okay, now I'm home." It was a
Yeah,
little
it's
cold.
quite chilly here.
Well, it's amazing. I want to talk about your passions and hobbies because I just loved hearing that you're involved in the startup community. I think you were just recently a part of the MIT startup days, right? Where people came with their projects. Tell me about that and how what happened there.
Yeah, I would love to. So there's a course, a graduate level course offered by the MIT Media Lab. It's called AI Venture Studio, led by Professor Ramesh Raskar. He is the kind of one of the leaders of the Media Lab, but also has worked in corporate environments, leading AI teams at Google, Facebook, and startups.
Wow.
So the purpose of that course is students, graduate students, PhD students that are really interested in launching a company. They enter that course. We help iterate on their business strategies, bring in a lot of folks from the startup world, the VC world, people like myself that can try to help them give feedback and get involved with their projects. So I was a TA for the AI Venture Studio course at MIT. We just wrapped up the semester last week, and that the conclusion was the final project is everyone's pitch of their company and what value it can bring and what their next steps are. So it was super exciting to see kind of some of the ideas that the students came up with, and how I think the coolest part was to see the passion they have for improving the world. Like, how can
Mhm.
we take this technology to make the world a more equitable place, to like ensure better outcomes for all members of society? So it was really exciting to see that spin and that lens on innovation.
Amazing. So can you share like some of the top projects or maybe just the projects that resonated with you?
Absolutely. So some of the ones that really caught my eye were more healthcare focused. So I thought it was interesting because it's blending this cutting edge technology with the physical world and with
Mhm.
compassionate care. So one of them was a co-pilot for ophthalmologists that can help really recognize patterns in eye scans and help enhance outcomes for people suffering from eye diseases. That one is actually, it's called Dr. V right now. It's actually being
Mhm.
piloted at some hospitals in India currently. So I
Incredible.
thought that was really cool. There were some tools to help with elderly care, actually. So coordination for different service providers for
Mm.
elderly folks, family members, to help coordinate their care. So I thought that was really powerful as
And
well.
that's so impactful with the population aging. It's so useful.
Absolutely, yeah. So I really liked that there was a focus not just on technical innovation, but also like how can we use the fact that technology exists to put tools that are affordable, that are useful, that are efficient in everyone's hands.
Make the world a better place. That's why we need classes like that. But you have passion of your own around fitness. You mentioned you teach classes. So how did this give you some ideas around your own project and what you can do?
So I think So it's my experience with fitness has been a little bit skewed. I teach at a gym called Equinox, which is kind of considered a more luxury type of
Mhm.
gym. And I teach at another kind of boutique Pilates studio. And it feels, I think I've really opened my eyes to the fact that fitness feels a lot more accessible for people that are already fit or that already have a lot of resources. So I
Mhm.
think that there's an opportunity with tech, and you see this a little bit with streaming services and sometimes with wearables, to make it so that it's more approachable for people. So possibly through customization, possibly through scale. Like when I look at Peloton, it's it's very expensive to
Yeah.
have a Peloton apparatus, but their streaming platform is infinitely scalable because you film it once for the subscribers and now you can distribute it as widely as you want.
And that's
So
what got me through COVID, to be honest with you, was I never had the Peloton bike or anything, but it
yeah,
was the platform. I paid like the $13 a month and I did all their trainings, and it helped so much. It really did.
they are phenomenal. But I think there's more growth opportunity there with personalization. Like maybe there's some type of virtual trainer assistant that understands your schedule, that understands your constraints, that understands maybe your health history, that can help integrate a little bit better into your life. So there's that, but I also had the pleasure of connecting with an entrepreneur that actually works at Google and is a Pilates instructor as well. She runs something called Studio Kila, which is a streaming platform, also with the mission of making fitness more accessible for different groups of people. She's actually part of the Native American community.
Wow.
So she donates a lot of her proceeds and has different tiers of membership for her platform where basically you can stream for free if
If
you're
you need
like
if you need
economically.
it, just go exercise, right?
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure like how this is going to evolve, but I do think there's a lot of opportunity to enhance people's lives through fitness, health, using some of the tools and data that we have.
I agree. So this is not AI related question, but I've personally struggled with like weight, and just now that I'm getting older, there's just so much information about looking younger, and you do this and you do that. And even, being an educated person, I have trouble processing all that information because I'm like, what does really work? Like, can anybody just boil this down to me? For me, like to three different things I need to just focus on. So if I was to ask you, you know, what's the advice for the rest of us who are not experts in this space but really want to improve? What are the three things we should kind of focus on?
Yeah, so I understand what you mean. I think there is a lot of information overload. And again, that's where maybe like some of these AI assistants that can easily integrate into
Yeah.
our lives would be most helpful. Um, but I think that three things. One is finding something that you enjoy. People ask me a lot, oh, what's the most effective
Yeah.
exercise? And I have some thoughts on that, but I think in reality, the most effective is the one you enjoy the most that you'll actually be able to do regularly, realistically. So that's number one is
Makes sense.
any movement exercise that you enjoy is the best one, most likely.
That's because you're
Um,
doing it. You're actually
yes,
moving. Yeah.
absolutely. Another one is that I think that with how heavily processed and calorically available food is in our
Yeah.
country,
Yeah.
our bodies have not necessarily evolved to catch up to process such dense food, meaning that historically we were maybe more inclined towards famine, so we naturally crave a high fat, high sugar, high calorically dense food because that was what helped us survive historically. But now food is omnipresent, so and I think heavily processed food is even more dense. So I
Yeah.
think that the second thing would be eating really whole foods that are recognizable, like the way that they come out of the ground is
Mhm.
probably the best form to consume them in. Meaning like less things that come from boxes and more
Sure.
whole foods, I think is really powerful. I dieted my whole life and then I decided to just optimize for health and the weight just fell off when I just decided to optimize for whole
Oh, yeah.
nutrient dense foods. You'd be surprised. So that's number two. And number three, I don't know if I have a third one. I think those two might be like,
The best
oh,
ones.
or maybe I think the
Yeah.
third one would be trying to integrate with a community
Mm.
that can share these experiences with you. I think this, like going on any type of lifestyle change journey, is really difficult if you don't have an accountability buddy or someone
Yeah.
to talk about it with. It's a hard change to make, and it's hard to be consistent. But if you have a community that values those things, or even just a friend that values those things, that you can kind of be on the journey together with, and I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, that goes a long way because it's so easy to say no to yourself. Like, oh, I just not right now, like, right? But if it's a friend, you're like, oh, I promised Jenny I would be there today. I need to make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really really powerful advice, and I really really appreciate it. So, so as we pull kind of AI back into this, you know, data science, we have all this data now. A lot of us are spoiled by tracking our sleep and tracking our movement and tracking, I don't know, you name it. I think it's being tracked on our phones, um, and somewhere else. So we have the data, and the question is, how do we take that data and then make insights using AI, right?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of interesting work being done in the health tracking and the wearables space. I do think there's a lot of opportunity there to maybe, I know that Whoop especially is doing a lot of preventative healthcare. That's their aspiration, is to,
Okay.
like, they want to know that someone's going to have a heart attack months or years prior so that we can change health outcomes. So I see a lot of potential there, but I will say, sometimes I feel that we are over optimizing things and
Hmm.
also integrating our lives with screens almost too
Yeah.
much. And I do think at our core, our body knows how to be healthy, and it knows what it wants, and it knows what to
Hmm.
do. The question is, can we listen to it? So sometimes my view is more, I don't need my watch to tell me to go take a walk. Like, I should just go outside and touch grass. Like, that should
Right.
just be part of my life and part of my desires. So, to answer your question, I think there's a lot of potential with wearables, a lot of potential to optimize your health, but also just kind of stepping away from the screen, I think, can be
Yeah.
really healing as well. And stepping away from the metrics can be really healing too.
Oh, I know, because they can make you feel so guilty and so much shame at the same right. Oh, I didn't close down my ring. It's that, just little things like that with the Apple Watch, you have to close your ring.
Yeah.
Um, and the obsession around, I will go so far as, like, I have a couple of friends that they compete around how many steps each one can take, and then they shame each other why the ring hasn't closed, because they integrate each other's data so they can see how far each one has gone. And I'm like, this is not good for your marriage. Like,
Oh, yeah.
because it's
Comparison.
not a good discussion to have.
Oh man. Yeah, I think it's a balance, because of course it's nice to have the accountability piece,
Yeah.
but yeah, it can just be a lot.
It can be a lot. Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little more about just kind of data science. I mean, you also work with customers in general, and you see different people trying different things right now. So as you look at kind of the world of data science, and AI, where do you kind of see things today?
So this has been a really exciting year for AI. I think it's the year that AI lived up to the hype of
Yeah.
what everyone thought that it could be. So you see like a real sudden interest and a sudden appetite in um, companies trying to integrate AI into their products to enhance them, and it's really exciting to see, because I think even large companies and like big enterprises have a hunger for innovation, because I think AI integration has become so ubiquitous that it's
Yeah.
almost like you have to have it to keep up. So I think there's just been like a huge amount of interest in it. I think you and I were chatting earlier about how it can really free up time and creative energy for
Right.
people. So I do think, like, in the coming years and decades, like, the labor market might shift, and the way we communicate, the way we learn might shift a little bit. But ultimately, I see us moving towards a future where human creativity and human imperfection is valued more than it has been historically, because we
Mm,
have AI available to help us with more rote tasks and to help automate our lives and do things that are a little bit more robotic. And then humans are a little bit freed up for important things like connecting with our families, doing creative pursuits, more strategic, high level thinking. So I see it shifting the dynamic of how we spend our time as it makes us more productive.
I love that. I would love to spend more time on art instead of, writing long reports or something like that, right? That takes a
Yeah,
lot of time.
absolutely. So, okay, I know we mentioned this a little earlier, but how do you think it will change the landscape of how we consume art?
Oh, I love that consume art. So I'm a big fan of museums still. There's something for me about being in a place that's surrounded with, different art and being able to walk from picture to picture. I just find that experience very valuable to me personally.
Mhm.
I can enjoy art online, but it doesn't always give me the same feeling. Like I can be in awe of it, especially art generated by AI. I'm always the quality with which it's produced is just getting better and better, and I'm always surprised by how it pulls different components that I would never even think to pull into a picture.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it gives lots of ideas. But to your point, I that's where we are given more ways to expand our mind, because a lot of times people would go to the art galleries or paint or draw because they would want to gather ideas so they can innovate, to give even art, writers, right? They read a lot of books because that helps gather ideas. And so this is another source in my mind to help synthesize ideas on a very specific topic in one place, to help drive innovation at a much larger phase. And to be honest, like I know it's future thinking, but I've been part of the internet, for like 30 years, and it's been incredible how fast things have changed. But I don't think we have 30 years with AI. And what I see is there's going to be significant change in like 5 years. And while we could be kind of scared and apprehensive, and I feel that with a lot of people are like, oh, you're not going to be creative anymore because now AI is going to do all the creative stuff. And I want to say, no, actually, I'm going to be more creative because now I have access to ideas I've never had before, and I actually have time to think through them a little longer. Yeah, so that's my perspective. I'm an optimist, I guess.
Yeah, I'm a tech optimist as well. But I agree with you because my perspective is that AI, generative AI specifically, can enable anyone to become a creator.
Yeah,
Like maybe I don't know how to paint or maybe I don't know how to code, but through using some of these supporting tools, I can still bring a vision to life. So I find the conversation around parenting now that we
yeah,
have tools like this here to be super interesting in terms of, are they helping us learn more, or are we becoming reliant on them? Separate conversation, but I think that anyone can be a creator, anyone can be an inventor when you
yeah.
have assistance like
Well,
this.
tell me more about the parenting part because I'm super interested.
Yeah. So, I mean, you see that it was actually super interesting because I have a friend that works in special education, and she said
Mhm.
their school has completely banned any use of ChatGPT or Bard for generating papers and such, which makes sense. Like, you should definitely learn some of these basics yourself. But
Yeah,
then I went to the AI Venture Studio course, and they actually said, we're doing the opposite. Use these tools like as much as possible. Just cite it,
okay,
cite when you use them, because they will help us generate more ideas, help us
right,
generate more content faster. So I thought that this kind of juxtaposition was pretty
yeah,
interesting. Um, my perspective is that it's going to democratize access to understanding things and like tutoring type of tools,
yeah,
very a lot.
yeah,
And so you, in fact, we saw some pitches for the venture studio course for kind of personalized tutors as well. And I'm imagining a world. There was actually an interview with Sam Altman recently where he said that he sees AI supporting a future where every kid has access to the same educational support that today's richest child has. And how will the world change if everyone has that type of access?
Yeah.
So I think in terms of accessibility to information and personalized learning, like you can ask questions, you can have it guide you through different tutorials. It really gives you that one-on-one experience. But I do think that there might be like kind of an opportunity if you want to be reliant on it to like maybe avoid learning certain things. But I see it as more of
Yeah.
a net positive in terms of those that really want to learn.
100%. And the other thing is think about the language support. Even something so small, right? Like we're so English focused, but there's many communities where education's needed and they understand their language. Or in India, there might be like, I don't know, hundreds of languages they speak in, right? And so having information in that language supporting and explanation does a huge like good thing. I don't know. It's just an amazing thing for that little girl, like in a village, right? That maybe her parents don't have money to send her to school, right?
Right.
And but she has access to this device and in her language, and there are incentives in these videos for her, not the American incentives of how win points or get gift cards, but incentives that work within her community for her educating herself, right? And now she can be educated in her language. She can be incentivized to learn using these tokens that are valuable in her community, right? Um, and so UNICEF is doing a lot around AI in this. I had a guest prior who Sumi, who spoke about that. She advises UNICEF on the use of AI, and so that's so as women in tech. I know we kind of started talking about that. It just kind of brought that in my mind because education in my mind is what helps women become more powerful and just knowledgeable and helps them support their families, right? Because if a woman is educated, there's research to say that her children will be educated. And so it's not just a single person that you impact, but potentially future generations. And to your point, democratizing that, not just in for the richest or better off communities, but those communities that usually are marginalized, right, in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a shame that today's world is a genetic lottery based on like what language do your parents speak, where were you born, and what resources were you born with, and what support does your family have. But it would be so beautiful to move towards a world where anyone that needs those resources, whether they're in India or
Yeah,
in a place where there's a different
right.
dialect that's not accessible, can have them. We actually saw one of the key engineers for Google's MedPalm, which is
Mhm.
a language model specific to healthcare applications. His name's Vivek Ratarajan.
Okay.
He is from a small village in India where there's a huge disparity in access to healthcare.
Right.
So he said that's what kind of drove his passion for this, because if we have these co-pilot assistant tools where I can get virtualized AI powered healthcare if I don't have maybe the means to see a real doctor,
Yeah.
or maybe it's just something that enhances the diagnostic experience for a real doctor. So his whole kind of thesis is about democratizing access to healthcare through tech. And I think education, healthcare,
Agreed.
maybe fitness, like I think there's so much opportunity for this in all different realms.
These are kind of basic. I mean, besides shelter, those are all kind of basic needs, right? And even with shelter, AI has potential of building, more kind of sustainable lodging, right? Or doing it in the communities that maybe don't have access to certain resources to build certain things and making them more impactful. So, how quickly we can iterate in building something new is pretty incredible, right? And innovation is all about iteration. So that's how I look at it. It's like the first stuff we're going to look at is probably not going to be great, but you will see the innovation going so quickly, that stuff that used to take us 10 years to get to now will take 1 month. And that's the change I think that we have to all be on the lookout for.
Yeah, it's definitely exponential the rate at which tech is changing. Yeah, just it seems to get more and more sophisticated day to day, week to week.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about responsible AI because we talked about AI helping in so many areas, right? But now we're sharing our personal information about what we're learning, what our health is like, potentially what our children are doing, right? So how can we protect to make sure that we don't overspin it to the other side where we don't have, you know, that it doesn't become a danger?
Absolutely. So I think there's a couple pieces here. So one is transparency, like having not everything be a complete black box.
Hmm.
Another is kind of fairness and non-discrimination, trying to avoid bias in AI systems. And the third is accountability. So I see it as if we're going to have AI supporting us, I think some of the most common examples we hear of are maybe with mortgage applications or with helping with like admission acceptances. You wouldn't want to, maybe because your historical data that the model is trained on is skewed toward in one place, you wouldn't want to perpetuate that. So
Right.
I think really having maybe like a human in the loop or checks in place to make sure that our output isn't biased in a way that maybe it was historically or maybe not is
Hmm.
one piece. And I think having transparent, explainable models as much as possible really helps with this because then you can trace it back into, well, why did we make that prediction? Where in the, excuse me,
So,
where in the, like, I guess, decision tree was that made and how can we improve on it? So transparency and then accountability, which I think goes into that. Um, how can we have checks and balances
yeah.
that really don't make it so that we've automated life to the point where the computer is doing everything for us. Like we
Mhm.
kind of need, even if it's just like a programmatic or a rules based check, to make sure that things aren't too skewed. So yeah, that's how I see bias as one of the biggest possible issues with AI.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mentioned that I went to the women's conference in Massachusetts this week, and there was an amazing presentation about how a lot of the models they can't read African American faces. They think that Oprah Winfrey is male, even though obviously she's not, just because it hasn't been trained on enough data in this case to recognize the difference. And it's getting better. It's getting better. But there will be more biases created, I think, as we add more data, right? Potentially. So training, and talk a little bit, if you can, about labeling data and training it in the right way. What are the things we should be thinking about?
Yeah, so it's tough because especially when you have these examples where if you think about, I've heard a lot of this in the medical textbook community where certain studies and diagnoses just haven't been tested outside of maybe
Yeah.
white men.
Right.
So I think it's hard when maybe prior data doesn't exist. So sometimes there's opportunity for to generate synthetic data, to collect more real data, and also what I think is important is having a human in the loop at some
Yeah.
point that like actually checking this. And that's again one of the things we chatted about earlier, which is AI can do a lot of the routine things, but you need the critical thinking and the strategic thinking and the compassion of a human to be involved with more like higher level functioning decisions. So yeah, so I see it as potentially new data gathering, potentially creating synthetic data so that you don't have these kind of imbalanced data
Mhm.
sets where 99% of your data set is one demographic and 1% is something else. So how can we make it more balanced? Maybe we kind of expand that 1% so that we have a like a more balanced training set.
Yeah.
So and then the third is again human in the loop supervision. Like we have our creative gifts, we have our gifts of empathy and compassion. So how can we embed those into AI and have this intersection of tech and the real world and compassionate care?
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I really do, because people are, we won't, having a person in the loop, you're just upping in terms of, you don't have to do the redundant tasks. You can offload that to AI. It's good about rule-based information, but where you can add value as a human is that compassion, right? And kindness, and just making sure it's correct. Because over automating or relying on AI to do something is wrong too, because there will be biases, and it will come at random times that we might not catch.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard the perspective of AI freeing up humans to be more human, which I
Oh,
thought was kind of counterintuitive and really interesting. Where if we're not doing the routine tasks, then we maybe have more mental bandwidth or intellectual bandwidth to think critically and say, hey, well, what happened to this output, or what happened to
mm,
this group of people, or what's the impact of this on another segment of society or on the environment? So hopefully there's a lot more brain power dedicated towards positive pursuits.
because that's what we are good at. We're good at connecting the dots from
Yeah.
different things, right? And so that requires actually a lot of downtime, which is counterproductive. You're like, I'm counterproductive, I'm just sitting here staring at the sky. But it's when you have the time to just kind of walk on the forest and stare at the skies when you actually have the best ideas, right? It's like, Newton, an apple fell on his head, he was sitting under a tree, and that's the whole gravitational theory. But that's really why you need to take time to sit under a tree sometimes and think about things.
Yeah, creatives need alone time and need space to kind of
Yeah.
generate new ideas. But again, I think AI also has this potential to help us become more creative by helping with that iteration process and maybe even coming up with new prompts and new thoughts. So yeah, it's kind of an exciting time to see how things evolve.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm excited to be on this journey with you because I'll be asking you a lot more questions. And I just want to
Likewise.
thank you so much for doing this with me today and just adding so much value to the community that listens to these. I really appreciate it, Mira.
No, thank you, Vicky. I think
Can't
it's
wait to see
phenomenal.
your startup. I'm already like betting. I'm going to be one of the first customers. So just keep me in
Oh,
mind in the future as you come up with this for
oh, I'm
fitness.
so thrilled. No, it'll be really exciting. But no, I think it's great that you're putting out this content around conversations around AI. It's always good to be generating new perspectives and kind of learning more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much,
Have a
Vicky.
great day. Take
Okay,
care.
bye.
Bye.